What's up, everyone? Welcome to DodgerHeads presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand, here to cover a topic that I know Dodger fans get very fired up about. It's Gavin Lux. And Daniel, there's been some interesting quotes from Dave Roberts, not only at the beginning of the season, but also over the last couple of weeks. And the question I want to ask is, have the Dodgers and Dave Roberts placed too much pressure on Gavin Lux? The reason I ask is the quote is, hey, we're going to give Gavin 150 at bats to sort of figure it out. We're going to give him a little bit of a runway. Well, now he's at 150 at bats. The offensive stats are very, very bad, even if you like the defense. So my question is, have the Dodgers been unfair in your estimation to Gavin Lux? Or I'm sure some would argue they've been more than fair.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I feel like them giving him that runway was kind of the opposite. Like, they're trying to take the pressure off of him by saying, like, hey, if you get off to a slow start, we're gonna give you, some time here to get going. Like, obviously he's coming off a torn ACL, so I don't think anyone really expected him to come out of the gate, on fire necessarily. And of course, they had the position change like a week before opening day. So I'm sure, there's kind of been a lot on Lux's mind the first couple months of the season, but I do think he's kind of started to settle in a little bit the last few weeks. Maybe the ceiling isn't as high as we originally thought it would be, but I still think he could be a productive player. And we've kind of, started to see that. The power hasn't come yet, but, I think by giving him that runway, it's taken some pressure off, in my opinion.
Yeah, looking over the last couple of weeks, and you can kind of do this and frame this however you want. If you wanted to take a positive view of Gavin Lux, he's hitting about 270 over the past 2 weeks. He's had a few extra base hits, a few walks mixed in as well. And so you're looking at a guy over the last 2 weeks where the slash line is something like 270, 330, 400, which nobody is signing that guy up to be like a perennial all-star. But I think that's the type of version of Gavin Lux that you could see being a productive player, and given the fact that he's under team control for a number of years, actually a valuable player as well. Before we jump back to offense, I do want to mention he's been really good defensively. I think that's been a surprise that when he was having a disastrous time at shortstop, then looked like he had a little bit of the yips even from second base. For him to become not only just an average shortstop, but depending on the metric, either above average at worst or borderline elite at best, has been a pleasant surprise, and I think probably taken a little bit of pressure off of the offensive side.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, I could only imagine like how much noise there would be like if he was making errors at second base in addition, to the offense not quite being there. So I do think that has been a huge positive. Like, he's had his issues in the past, but it seems, a lot of those were kind of mental. And I think this, the switch to second base, making that throw shorter has definitely helped him. And we'll see as it continues to go if that will stick. Like, I'm pretty confident that what we've seen is sustainable, at least from the defensive side. And like you said, if he could kind of, keep up the offense to where it's at least a little above average, then you have a productive player right there.
Yeah, and I think that's, if you want to map out sort of the pathway for Gavin Lux to sort of ingratiating himself back to Dodgers fans and to carving out a role where the Dodgers maybe look at him even beyond this year, that feels like it. Can you give us above average to elite defense? Right now, outs above average, he's 80th percentile. Fielding run value as a whole, he's 65th percentile. Can you give us that level of defense? And can you be even just a league average hitter? Can you hit 270 with a 330 on base and a 400 slug, which gets you to a weighted runs created plus right around 100? I think if you can do that, then all of a sudden you've got yourself a valuable player and a guy that you can at least pencil into a sort of a lineup card that at the moment feels like it has a couple different holes, and take that one off the list. Say, hey, you know what? He's not an all-star. He's not going to hit 40 home runs, but he's going to give us above average defense and average offense, and we'll take it from Gavin Lux. The question is, do you think, Daniel, he can get there? I'm looking at the slash line right now. He's slashing 209, 267, 288. That's good for a 555 OPS, which is terrible. His weighted runs created plus is like below 70, I think. So the question is, given that he missed all of last year, he's now 150 at bats into this year. From this point forward, do you think Gavin Lux can establish himself even as just an average offensive player?
So I would say the main thing for me is the lack of power has kind of been a little concerning for me. And that's not just looking at this year. That's kind of looking at his MLB career as a whole. Like even in 2021, whenever it was when he had like his best season, or maybe that was 2022. 2022.
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly a power guy, which He did flash some power in the minors. So I think that is the concerning part, because if you're not bringing much power to the table, then for you to be, average or above average offensively, you're going to have to get a lot of hits. You're going to have to draw a lot of walks, like similar to like a guy like Luis Ariz on the Padres. Like I would consider him above average, but he's, no power, but he's hitting well over 300. So for him to be above average, he's getting a lot of hits there. So I think that's the challenge that faces Gavin Lux. But I also think the luxury that he has on his side and the Dodgers have on their side is that they do have this big, division lead, and we're sitting here on June 3rd, and it's not like they're pressured to be like, hey, we need to get more production out of Gavin Lux because we're in a fight with the Padres for the division race or whatever. Like, they basically can take this, regular season as a 162 game audition and then see from there, or at least from now until the trade deadline. Like, you could kind of reassess from there, go see if you need to pick up a shortstop to move, Mookie back to second base, or find another second baseman, or give Miguel Rojas playing time, whatever the case may be. I do think you could give Lux more time here to kind of evaluate him. Like, it's been 2 months or so in the regular season, and while that is a pretty large sample, at the same time, he's coming off a torn ACL, and he just got back this year. So I do think kind of that first month was him kind of getting back into the swing of things. And this last month, has been better, not great necessarily, but he's been definitely more productive. So I think we could kind of see a slight upward trajectory. I just don't think he's ever going to reach that level that maybe we once envisioned him making.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Like, he gets thrown into the same bucket as a guy like Chris Taylor, but Chris Taylor doesn't really have an excuse for why he's as bad as he currently is. Gavin Lux, at least you can point to some percent. Maybe it's 20% of the problem. Maybe it's 70% of the problem. Like, hey, this guy blew out his knee and missed all of last season. Add in the emotional side of like being a disaster at shortstop and having to live through that. Like, at least if you want to be optimistic, you can say, those are things that are going to matter less and less as time goes on. Those are things that are going to fade away, and maybe it improves. But I do think you touched on the key, which is the power piece. There's a statistic, isolated power, ISO, which is basically your slugging percentage minus your batting average. It's how much power are you tapping into? How many extra bases are you able to get? Gavin Lux has never been a big, he has 19 home runs in like 1,200 plate appearances. Okay. So he's not a home run hitting machine, but even in 2021, 2022, he had 13 home runs combined. His ISO those years were 122 and 124. Those aren't great numbers, but to give you context, this year it's 078. So we're talking about a guy who his slugging percentage is only 78 points higher than his batting average, which means he's not getting a ton of hits. And when he gets hits, they're all singles. So that's the key, I think, for Gavin Lux, is not even to hit home runs, but can you tap into some doubles power? Can you tap into some triples power? I think in that 2022 season, if I remember right, it's 7 triples. Like, 20 doubles. Can you get to places where it's not necessarily home run power, but you're using your speed, which again is elite, 81st percentile in base running value? Like, can you tap into the speed in order to increase your total bases? Because I think that's where the value is going to be. And so I've said before, and people on the show know, like, I'm a Gavin Lux. I still believe, I still have hope, I still have optimism. And so I'm going to take this last 2 weeks, the 280 batting average, and say, hey, I think there's something there. Like, I think he's figuring it out. But it remains to be seen. It's a big hill to climb. We need to see a lot more from Gavin Lux. I think, like you said, if it's a slight trajectory upward, I know based on our comments, that's not going to be enough for Dodger fans. And so while I'm optimistic, while I'm hopeful it's going to be that, I'll be honest that I can't say with certainty that he's going to be there. So, Daniel, any last thoughts on Gavin Lux before we wrap this up?
I would say just kind of like making this more of an issue, I guess, is the fact that a lot of other guys aren't producing as well. Like, I think coming into the season, like, Gavin Lux was the 9-hole hitter, and if you're getting more production from the rest of your lineup, and Gavin Lux is your 9 hitter, then you're in a pretty good spot. But when the pretty much the rest of your bottom of the order is struggling as well, and now Lux is like your 6 or 7 hitter, and you're kind of relying on him more, then it makes the issue look a lot larger. So if they could if other guys could start producing more, and Lux kind of continues on this upward trajectory, then I think they'll be fine. But if not, then that's definitely something they could look at at the end of July at the trade deadline.
It's a great point. It's a great point. When he's hitting 6th, the magnifying glass gets larger and larger on Gavin Lux. So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Are there anybody else out there who are still optimistic, still believers that Gavin Lux is going to figure this out, or has that ship sailed? in your mind. That is Daniel Starkand, and I am Jeff Spiegel. If you missed it, check out the Sunday night show that Blake Williams and I did last night. It was a ton of fun. A lot of good content in there. It's available, of course, right here on the Dodger Blue YouTube page, as well as Apple, Spotify, and Google. If you just search for the DodgerHeads podcast, you can catch it there. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. As always, go Dodgers.